So today we're going to be taking a look at how we can assemble a photo manipulation blending a shark and an elephant. These two seem to have no connections, but we're going to see how we can use pieces of the elephant to build out on our shark and make a combination that will be very unique and create its own monster or own animal. We're going to first look to expand out our canvas for our shark. We're going to go to Image, Canvas Size. I'm going to change my measurements from inches to pixels. And I'm going to adjust my width to be 1200. And my height, we're also going to go to 1200. Just gives us plenty of room to work with. And when I do hit expand, our canvas goes a little bit outside of our actual frame. If I want to center my overall document, I can go over to the hand icon on the left side navigation. You can see how it shows an example of what the hand does. But if you double click right on the hand icon, it automatically places the entire canvas inside of your document and your frame. So now that we have the area to work with, I'm going to use the move tool, slide my shark up a little bit, just because we're going to need more space down on the bottom left side, and you'll see why in a moment. We're going to go over to our elephant image. With our elephant image, there's many ways of selecting out areas, but we're looking to select out specific areas of our elephant and build out the overall shape. So I'm going to go over to our quick selection tool, fourth tool left side navigation, depending on your layout. With the quick selection tool, there is a little plus sign appearing inside. I'm going to click and drag inside of the ear area of my elephant, and it does get a little bit of the back. We can erase that a little bit later on, but I am going to get some of the wrinkle areas as well. Just getting the overall ear itself. With this area selected, we see the dotted lines appearing around it. It isn't the cleanest overall selection, but we can go back and clean this up in a little bit when we get into modifying. With the ear selected, I'm going to hit Command or Control C. Copies it over. Then we can go over to our shark image and hit Command or Control V, pasting it in. And again, like I said before, it does come out a little bit rough. It's very soft around the edges. If I slide this down a little bit, what I want to look to do is clean this up overall. To clean this up, we're going to first add a layer mask onto the ear. And I'm going to rename this, call it ear fin, because we're going to use this to replace the traditional fin of our shark and replace it with big floppy fins of the elephant ear. So we're going to call it ear fin. You can name it whatever you'd like, but we're going to also add a layer mask. To add a layer mask, we're going to go down to the white square black circle. When I click on this, we see a white box appear next to our layer itself. With the eraser tool over on the left side navigation, I do want to make sure that my brush is set properly. Because we're erasing around the edge of our ear, I want to make sure my hardness is up at 100 and my opacity at the top navigation is up at 100. We don't need the entire area, so I can use the eraser to slowly go down the edges of the ear, making sure that it is more smooth and looks a little bit cleaner overall. I go through a couple of the wrinkles. I'm just going to take my time to go around the edges so that it's not so blurry. I still have a couple of little wobbly areas that are reflected in the main original ear, but it's not losing attention or distracting you with blurred edges. You can always take a little bit of creative liberty if I want to round out some edges or corners or eliminate out some sections. I'm going to do just that. I want to make sure that it looks as clean as what I want. The top, I did get a portion of the back of the body of the elephant, so I can erase this out. I don't need it. But take your time, make sure that it's as accurate as possible. Now that we did erase out areas of the ear, now we're going to look to help blend this in to make it look like it would be part of the shark. Again, we're going to look to replace this over top of the fin over on the right side here. But we want to match the color a little bit better. If I want to match the color, we can look to adjust the color overall. We're going to go up to Image, Adjustments. And the reason why you can't see it is because we are not on the actual image, we're on the layer mask. So make sure you go over to the Layers panel, switch from the layer mask, that white square, over to the actual ear fin, the picture. With that now selected, we can go back up to Image Adjustments, and now you see that hue and saturation is available to be selected. With the hue and saturation panel, I can get into adjusting the numbers. For my sake, I already know that I want to get more of this grayish, a little bit of blue tone in this. So I'm going to adjust my hue up to about 150. You can always type in the numbers as well. My saturation, I need to take away because this blue is way too strong. We're going to drop our saturation to about -80. And there's still a little bit of blue in there, but it's also a little bit light. I can always adjust the lightness. I'm going to drop my lightness down to about -10. Give me a better color overall. I can always make adjustments if I need. Adjusting if I'm not satisfied with the overall look. And I'm just going to push up my saturation for this one to -90. Once I'm satisfied with that, I'm going to click OK. And the idea of this is that we're going to help replace and cover up this fin. But I also do want to take note of what this fin looks like. Looking at the side, or what looks like the front for us, where we see the shadow area, I'm going to actually take a sample of this fin so I have something to reference when I'm getting into modifying our ear. So I'm going to click on the shark layer, hit Command or Control C, Control V, to slide this down so I have a reference for later on. I can go back over to my ear, and before we start getting into modifying this, we're actually going to create a duplicate of this ear so that we can use it for the fin over on the left side. So to create a duplicate, I can hold down Alt or Option on my keyboard, click and drag an object over. Just so it's not a distraction, I'm going to hide this layer for a moment. But this ear copy is now going to be my second ear fin, or you can call it your left ear fin, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to focus on blending this first one. And if I slide this up, I might notice that this fin of the shark is getting out of position, or further back, that it's poking out. I may have to actually cut off this fin so it's not going to be a disruption. So I'm just going to draw out a little shape over top of the area that I want. I can hide this layer so you can see it. If I don't want the whole thing, or if I want to draw larger, this is eventually going to be covered up anyway. So I can look to simply hit backspace, eliminate out that section. I can hit Command or Control D, deselect, and I can reveal my ear fin again. And again, we're looking to create some type of floppy type of fin. So with this, we're going to look to blend in the top portion of this. Make sure that we're selected on the layer mask. The layer mask has to be selected so that we erase, and we can always get back any issues if we mess up. So I'm going to click over on the eraser tool, left side navigation. With the eraser, I definitely want to make sure that I drop my hardness down to 0, and I'm going to drop my opacity to 50%. With my opacity to 50, a soft brush, what I'm going to look to do is click and drag over areas to start blending it in, and you have to go over the areas a few times, so let go of the mouse, do it over again. You can hear as I click, it's starting to reveal out areas. I don't want to blur too much, but I just want to create the sense that this is blending into the overall space. And if any areas are messed up, or if I don't like how it's blending, I don't like how soft this is, I can always go back to the paintbrush and paint areas back in. Or I can always erase out with a hard edge, taking out, say, if I don't like these wrinkles, I'm going to push my eraser back up to 100% opacity and push my hardness back up to 100% opacity, or 100% hardness. And now I can erase out these sections so that this looks smoother overall. So that way it breaks into the body. It looks like it's bending right where the fin would be. But again, we talked about creating some type of dimension where we're getting a shadow and creating the sense that this is part of the body. We can see with the original fin that there's like this darker area of gray and then the lighter area on the top portion. If we want to create this same idea, we're going to be using either the burn tool and dodge tool. The dodge tool lightens areas, whereas the burn tool will brighten up some areas. I'm going to first click on the burn tool. And with the burn tool, I want to make sure that my range is set to midtones because we're dealing with the mid-gray. And I'm just going to push my exposure up to about 25% for right now. We could always adjust it up to 50, but it's just a matter of the time and speed that you want to take to get this design. So again, I'm seeing this darker gray on the original fin. I want to kind of replicate that same idea going down the left side of our ear fin. Make sure that we are on the actual ear fin layer to be able to adjust, not on the layer mask. But as I click and drag down this edge, I start to darken it up. And if I'm not happy with the exposure, I can again push this up to about 50%. It will go a little bit faster and create a faster shadow in this section. Once I have the shadow area over in the section, now I'm going to look to create out a highlight of gray over on the right side of this fin. Just separating the right versus the front. To do this, I'm going to go over to my dodge tool. And with the dodge tool, I can adjust the sides of the brush, right bracket or left bracket. Right bracket goes larger, left goes smaller. And again, I want to be on midtones. This time I'm going to click and drag down the right side of that highlight, or that shadow that we had. Just give a little bit better separation between our original fin from the now side or front. Zoom out. You can see now we have a better separation. If you feel like it's too much, you can always step back, Command or Control Z. If I wanted to lighten up some areas, I could go back over top of, with the dodge tool over this dark. And I might want to switch over to my shadows so that the shadows become more of a gray. So it just lightens it up a little bit, but it still works and helps create a little bit more dimension. Now that we have our one fin over on the right side, now we're going to look to do the fin over on the left. This is an overall demonstration, so we're not going to worry about the back of our shark, but we can see how we can adjust to create out our own. So I'm going to eliminate out this fin of our shark, and we're actually going to create a duplicate of this piece as well, because this fin we have to really pay attention to the details that make up the underbelly, the white area that represents our shark. I'm going to select around the area I want, hit Command or Control C, Command or Control V, then use the Move tool, slide this over so that I have a reference to look at. Now we want to reveal ear fin 2 or our ear fin left. And this is quite large in comparison to what I want. This fin over on the left should be smaller and the angle is going to change. If I want to scale and modify this, I'm going to hit Command or Control T. I can scale this object down. But a big portion is that I want to get the angle correct. So I want to actually right click on the transform object and hit distort. With distort, I can get into modifying and warping the shape to fit better overall to that space. Just take your time with adjusting on the corners. Gives you a lot of freedom to be able to adjust, but we still do want to cover up our other fin. I'm trying to think about how the arrangement would work, placing it over top of the area, making it look like it would still be symmetrical, but further away. So once I'm satisfied with it, I can hit enter. And it's covering up the other fin. Now we're going to make sure to click on the layer mask for our ear fin, because we're going to look to erase out the top portion so that it appears behind the body or the underbelly of our shark. I'm going to go over to the eraser tool and make sure my hardness is at 100%. I have a solid hard edge, and I'm going to erase out the top portion, eliminating this out. And if I ever go too far, if I reveal some transparent area like you see there, I can always go back in with the paintbrush to touch up those areas and make sure that it's visible again. So I go over to the brush tool, just adjust the size of my brush a little bit down. I'm going to push my opacity up and hardness up. But again, just go along this edge, revealing the rest of the fin that I accidentally erased. Now that we have this second fin, we want to try to replicate and create some details that we see from the original fin. With this original fin, we have the separation of this dark gray versus the white of the underbelly. So we're going to kind of create this, and I'm going to use the lasso tool to help create this. Polygon lasso tool is a little bit restrictive, but with the lasso tool, you can really get into giving a jagged look as you're drawing. So I'm going to take my time, go through it. If you mess up, you can always restart. But I'm just going to kind of do my best to replicate the same type of a design. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's all your own. For the backside, I can leave it a couple times. I'll reveal and bring back some gray. I can give it a little bit more wobble if I want. But the reason why we're doing this, again, just trying to create the realism, make it as accurate as we can to the rest of the body. So now that I have this area selected, we can do a couple different methods for lightening up this area, creating more of this white. I'm first going to go up to image adjustments and hue and saturation, but make sure that you're on the correct layer. With the earfin 2 image selected, not the layer mask, I'm going to go up to image, adjustments, hue and saturation. And for this, I'm really kind of just looking to brighten this up. Unfortunately, the lightness is not a great option because when I do bring this up, it starts to take away details of our veins and wrinkles within inside the fin. So make sure that you think about the best tool for what you're trying to do. For right now, I'm just going to leave my lightness up to about plus 20, but we're going to go back up to image, back to adjustments, and this time we're going to click on brightness and contrast. And you'll see with brightness and contrast, when I modify the brightness, it's not taking away too many details inside of the underbelly area, but what can really help it is adjusting the contrast. With adjusting the contrast, it starts to bring back some of those shadowed areas so that I'm really seeing the definition of those veins, those wrinkles. So I'm going to push up my contrast to about 50 to 60, just so it's a little bit more visible. My brightness right now is about 38. I'm going to reduce it down to about 30. And once I'm satisfied with it, I can click OK. Then I'm going to deselect. Now I want to think about adding in some shadows underneath because it is still the underbelly. It is going to have some darker shadows. I'm going to go back over to my burn tool, left side navigation. With the burn tool, it's located where the dodge tool is as well. With the burn tool, I definitely want to darken up the top portion. I can shrink down the size of my brush if I want to get in certain details. But remember what section you're on. If you're in midtones, it's going to really burn the midtone gray colors. If you're on highlights, it will really get those white areas a little bit faster. I can enlarge the brush, go down certain areas. If I wanted to get this really sharper line, I could always just adjust the hardness and go down those areas again. But if I feel like this darker gray area is getting too dark, I can go back over to my dodge tool. It's just a matter of jumping back and forth to figure out what's going to look best. I can go back into lightening some of these areas. But overall, it looks pretty good of what I was trying to get at. So I can take away this other fin. We have our two fins. Now we want to get into how we can distort and modify the head. So we're going to want to go back to our elephant. The first thing we're going to look to do is take this tusk. To take the tusk, we can go over to our quick selection tool. Quick selection, fourth tool, left side. This time it's going to click and drag inside of the tusk. Make sure that we're deselected. And it does a pretty good job of recognizing the tusk itself. I can hit Control or Command C, go back over to our shark, and then hit Control or Command V. Layers wise, make sure that we have our tusk visible. We're going to look to put this in the side of the mouth, kind of make it look more of a snaggletooth, not just a separate tusk like we do with the normal elephant. But we do have this gap in between where the mouth ends. I'm going to slide our tooth into this section, or this tusk into this section. Then we're going to add a layer mask, just as we did for the other layers. I go over to the eraser tool, and I'm going to erase out the top portion. I have a hard brush, so it's going to be an easy erase. If I erase too much, I can always go back to the paintbrush and paint areas back in, so that's back to what I want. But again, I'm on the layer mask so that the object can be more visible. And again, I can go back to my eraser tool if I want to clean up some edges. So I want to sharpen out the outside of this tusk. So once I'm satisfied with it, now we want to burn the top of this tooth, make it look like it's a little bit inside of the mouth. I'm going to go over to the burn tool, left side navigation. With the burn tool, I want to change my range to highlights, so I get the whites of this tusk. Again, just adding the shadow. But if you see that I'm erasing, it's because I'm actually erasing on the layer mask. I want to step back, make sure that we're erasing on the actual image, or burning on the actual image. So I go over top of this area. I want to see these grays. I'm probably going to want to drop my hardness down so it's a little bit softer. Then I can switch over to midtones if I want to burn some of this gray area. Just get a smaller brush. Just again, trying to make it look like it's inside of the mouth or coming from inside the mouth. Now that I have the tusk, now we're going to look to get the trunk and head of our elephant. We're going to go back to our elephant, deselect, and click on the quick selection tool. This time I'm going to click and drag inside of the head without selecting the ears, without selecting the body. I'm focusing on getting all the wrinkles of the head, get the mouth, and get the trunk. We can skip over top of the area or avoid the area of the tusk. And Photoshop does a great job of recognizing the overall space and image. We're going to hit Command or Control C. Back over to our shark, zoom out once, and I'm going to hit Command or Control V, pasting in this elephant head. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And the reason why we created this space is that we do have a very long trunk. So we have to make sure that we're counting and fitting it all into a certain area. But if I look at the elephant, we do have to work on the color. We also have to fix the trunk itself. There's a little cutout based off the tusk. We're going to go over to the polygon lasso tool, or you can use the regular lasso tool. But I'm going to click point by point around the area that I want to fix inside of the skin of the elephant. We have to have it inside the area to make sure that we bring back the texture that we see. Then I can cut back up and get back to where I started. We're going to go up to Edit. Under Edit, we're going to go to Fill, and with Content Aware, Photoshop does a great job of recognizing the area, reproducing the wrinkles of the trunk, placing it in. Now that we have our trunk all filled in, now we're going to get into colorizing it. And if you remember the numbers from previously, we're going to go back up to Image, Adjustments, this time Hue and Saturation. We're going to push our hue to plus 150. Saturation is going to go negative 80. And my lightness is going to drop down to negative 10. Once I'm satisfied with it, I can click OK. And there's room for adjustments and improvements, or if I need to make some changes, we'll see how we blend it in overall together as one image. It seems a little bit dark, but when we do the blend, what we're going to look to do is use the Move tool to slide the elephant head over top of our shark. And I'm going to look to make sure that I am covering up the snout of our shark. If you need to make any slight adjustment, we can always look to cut out the shark nose. I go over to the shark layer, just click and drag over this area and just hit backspace. We're not going to need to see that. But I'm going to put my elephant now lined up where the trunk and the edge of the nose are sitting in place. Now to help distort this shape, we want to get the head of our elephant to fit better overall to the body of the shark. Before I do this, we're going to add a layer mask, and we're going to erase out the areas that we don't need around the top edge of the head. We are still going to maintain a lot of this area, but I'm just cleaning up so we have a smoother overall shape for the head of our elephant. We can get this little chunk of what was the back ear. So we can just focus on the overall face. So once I have this all drawn out, all right, and cleaned up, we're going to look to now help bring this head and fit better to the body of our shark. To do this, we're going to click over on the elliptical marquee tool, the rectangular marquee tool, second tool left side. I'm going to draw a box just around the top portion of the head. The reason why we're drawing it around the top portion of the head, we want to make sure that we do not have the bottom trunk where we can mess up or distort it. There'll be a lot more to work with. We want to focus just primarily on this portion. With this area selected, we're going to hit Command or Control T, transform. Then we're going to right click and hit warp. With warp, we get this grid system. If I want to see it a little bit better, I'm going to switch it over to 3x3 just so we can see the boxes as we manipulate. So you can grab any of these intersecting points, any of these anchor points on the outside, or grab from the middle of any of these shapes. But if I start out, I'm just going to take my time dragging areas down, and it helps to shrink and skew the size of the head. And just an error on my end where I want to make sure that the grid is on the default. I will be able to see it manipulate these areas. And we can see that it's a little bit easier as it transitions and scales down the overall image. So what's happening right now is that I'm on the layer mask, and it's creating a couple of issues. So I'm just going to hit escape. I'm going to go back and make sure that I'm on the actual image. I can hit Command T, bring up the transform, right click and hit warp. Then now when I start to manipulate it, we start to bring down the head and the shape of our elephant so it fits better to the shark. We'll come back and erase out these areas later on. But as I grab these corners, we're just taking our time to help flatten out the top of the head. Again, we don't want to touch the bottom 4 points here. We want to make sure that it is looking smooth overall for the head shape. But I also want to check the eye and make sure that we're visibly matching up relatively where the eye is of the elephant and the shark. So I can drop down the opacity of this layer. And you can see that the eye of the shark is a little bit over to the right. So I can click and drag and you see how I adjust the eye to the correct positioning. Now I can put the opacity back up. And I'm just going to finish tweaking the overall space. Once I'm satisfied with the placement, there is still plenty more to do, but I'm going to hit enter just to see how it came out, and I can hit Control D, deselect, and we do have a better fitting head overall. But again, I do want to clean up these edges as I need to go back into the layer mask and erase out the edges. I can click and drag with a hard edge eraser to erase out and create the transition so that the head looks like it's going into the body of the shark a lot easier. You can also round out this eye as it feels like it's poking out a little bit too much. But it still maintains a lot of the common traits that you see in the elephant's face. So now that I have this smoother blend on top, now we want to get into blending overall on the back. So we're going to go over to our eraser tool. I'm going to drop my opacity or the hardness to 0 and my opacity to 50%. With this, I'm going to click and drag, let go, re-go over top of the areas a few times so that they start to disappear and start to reveal some more of the shark. As I subtly go over top of them, I'm just revealing what I can of the shark while still keeping the main portions of the elephant. But one key area is that the trunk right now is kind of blocking out our mouth of our shark. What I want to do is actually go back to my eraser and push my hardness back up to 100 and my opacity back up to 100. I'm going to go down to reveal some of this mouth. I'm going to eliminate some of the trunk, revealing out the teeth of our shark. I'm just going to slowly take my time to eliminate some of the edge of our trunk, but it still maintains the overall size that we need for this space. So once I have that smooth blend overall, just creating the sense that we have a mouth in which it can still eat in some way. I want to go back into blending the other areas. So hardness back down, opacity to 50%. Now I can soften up these areas till I'm satisfied with the overall look. But there's still going to be one final step of getting this to blend overall. And that is bring the white underbelly into our trunk. This white area, I want to continue into this rest of the image. So to do this, I need to create a dodge along the edge of the trunk itself. So we're going to go over to the dodge tool, left side navigation. With the dodge tool, we again want to make sure that we're on the actual image, not the layer mask. And we want to make sure that our range is set on midtones. So with midtones, it's going to turn these gray areas into more of a white. I'm going to click and drag over a couple times so that I reveal this white to look like it's connected to the underbelly color, seeing this white along the image. I don't have to go all the way down the trunk, but just helps to bring in some of this white aspect until it fades out. And we can see that it's a lot better now blend from the original shark into our trunk of our elephant. If I'm having an issue where it's overlapping or cutting off our tusk, I can always go over to the tusk layer and just move it up so that the trunk or tusk is in front of those pieces, those features. But that's the process for creating out our Eleshark or sharkophant, however you want to say it. Now we want to bring in our shark into a background that sets the environment. So I'm going to look to select out all the pieces that make up our shark, or Eleshark. I'm going to click on the Move tool, first to left side navigation, click and drag over top of our object, and then use the Move tool to move it to the underwater image that I provided. It is quite large right now, so I'm going to hit Command or Control T and scale it down. And I'm going to have it sitting or floating above our turtle here. And based off of the shadow under the turtle, we need a shadow underneath of our shark. There's a couple different ways about it, but we'll go with the basics for today and just creating out that shape. We're going to create a new layer that sits above our background. I'm going to rename it Eleshark Shadow. And I'm going to click on our lasso tool. With the lasso tool, we're going to kind of eye and imagine what it would look like if a shadow is casting underneath of the Eleshark, just like we see with the turtle here. It's going to be very thin in the back and then get wider as it goes towards more the body of the shark. And we can try to think about how the shape of the fins might apply and take up some space. But I also have this running off the page, so I don't have to draw out the whole thing. But it just helps to get the overall shape of the object. So when I get back to where I started, we're going to look to fill this area in for a shadow, but I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to match one of the darker blue tones that I see within the image. And then I can use the paint bucket tool to drop into the selected area. I'm going to deselect, Command or Control D. That's the most important step because we need to blur this out. And to blur this out, we're going to go to Filter at the top navigation, down to Blur, and Gaussian Blur. With Gaussian Blur, I don't need to push the radius too high. I'm going to drop this back down to about 6 or 7. And right now it doesn't look realistic, but I'm going to click OK on the radius. And what we're going to do is change our blend mode where it says normal over to multiply. The multiply works well, but it is a little bit too dark, so I am going to drop the opacity down to about 75%. And I can always adjust if I need to, if it's not strong enough or it's too strong, figure out what looks best overall. But once we have that shadow, we are complete for this assignment. I hope you enjoyed. Good luck with your photo blending, and I'll see you again soon.